Thanks. Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Vocal Action Podcast, where community and culture collide. I'm Rashana, the creator, host, and your community connect for the Vocal Action Podcast. And first and foremost, I want to say thank you for listening and watching wherever you are listening and watching from. We are on all streaming platforms, so find us. I also want to say thank you to our special guest today. As you see, Patrick Kimble of Caste Capital, and we'll get into who he is in a second. But before we do that, if you haven't already joined our community, please like, subscribe, follow us so that we can continue to grow our community. Give us some feedback because we want to learn what you all want to hear and learn more about who you all want to see as guests. And, we ask that guests are doing great things in the community because that is what this podcast is about. And now, let me introduce this special guest. So, I have my notes on the side here. Patrick Kimble is a native Bostonian, entrepreneur, investor, philanthropist, and real estate private equity professional. I got that from your LinkedIn. He is an alumnus of Bentley University, where he majored in economics. He also graduated from Lincoln Sudbury High School, where he was a part of the MECO program and currently serves on the board of the MECO program. He's all of these things to the world and the community, but to me, he is my cousin and now business model, as he is the founder and managing partner of Caste Capital, a private equity firm in Boston. Thank you so much, Patrick, for being my second guest for season 3 of the Vocal Action Podcast. Really excited to have you.
I love it. It's an honor. Thanks for having me.
Yes, yes, yes. So, as I said as I said in the intro, you're my cousin. So, how have you been? I know we haven't talked
Well,
in a while. I feel like.
I know life has been
Like,
lifing, as they would say, but I've
mhm.
been well, and I was just talking before we started recording here. You're doing well as well, so it's good. It's so good to see you and be here on your show.
Yeah, what have you been up to
You know,
other than running
working,
your whole
working. That's
health
that
part?
that is it. That is it. No, we've been having a good time. I've been trying to live a little bit,
Yeah.
but really just building the business has been the main focus for us as of late. So that's the season that I'm in, Rashana. It's the season that I'm in.
Yeah, no, that's real. That's real. That's real. So, I saw speaking of building businesses, are you still a part of the 1% gallery?
Yeah, that's the first
Okay.
business that I co-founded.
Okay.
That
And tell
business is
everybody what
still.
that is.
Yep. So that is a creative consulting agency that I launched actually in collaboration with my brother Donald Kimble, who runs that business now full time from Miami. That business is still running. It's operating. It actually sits under the Caste Capital umbrella.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
so
Yeah.
it has been one of the catalysts, if you will, for the entrepreneurial journey as we see it today.
Okay. And what got you into the entrepreneurial journey?
You know, really just wanting to control my own destiny,
Yeah.
right? I think it's always kind of ran in my DNA,
Hmm.
wanting to be able to control what I work on, control my time, while also maximizing the output and the return on the time.
Right.
So that really has been the main reason to pursue entrepreneurship here over the years.
Okay. And I'm trying to think. I feel like I can see that. I can see that. I feel like particularly in high school, you really like develop this business mindset. Um that I can remember and utilizing the resources that you had through your school, but also like you said, just probably looking around and seeing other entrepreneurs as well. Like that's something I feel like you've always liked, like finer things, and you got to work to get those things.
Yeah, no, and not waiting on the next man or woman to, anoint you with the life that you want. Right, it's a different
Yeah.
journey. It is not glamorous by any means, but it's definitely worth it. And it is something that I think, to your point, at a very early age, you see what that path could look like. So curious minds are going to walk down.
Yeah, who were or where did you, see entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I mean, growing up in Dorchester, Roxbury, and Mattapan at different times, there are entrepreneurs all around us, right?
Yeah.
So from the person that owns the corner store, being an entrepreneur personally, you're going and you're shoveling out cars or shoveling driveways and kind of making your own schedule. To a very crucial moment, actually, that I can reflect on right now is one of my first jobs was working on an oil truck, and it was a family friend whose family owned an oil business, if you will. And I rode that truck every Saturday from sun up to sundown, and it was a family-owned business. And I had
Hmm.
never saw people of color operating a oil business, and the fact that they had the opportunity to hire me by way of proximity and give me an opportunity to make some cash every Saturday,
Yeah.
that was very inspiring to me to watch a collective group of folks blaze their own path. So that was one of the early ones. And my mom too. My mom has been entrepreneurial in her own right.
Yep.
She's had event planning businesses. I've watched her always, turn one into three, and that has been a huge
For sure.
inspiration for me to pursue something entrepreneurial.
Yeah, I think I feel like I thinking about like the different businesses and the neighborhoods. I think growing up that kind of went like for me. I think it went over my head that these people had their own businesses. Um yeah, when you just mentioned that, like, yes, as an adult, I definitely know that, but I don't know if I fully understood that growing up. Um, yeah, so that's a very interesting piece there. It definitely is all around us. Yep, definitely is all around us. One thing, just around like being a leader in the community that I learned is so Patrick and I, we share a grandfather and we call him Grandin. And when Grandin passed, that was the first time I learned that my cousin, who I call my Uncle Ricky, was his godson. And after the funeral, I was talking to Uncle Ricky, like, how come I never knew, like, Grandin was your godfather and everything. And he just started telling me like more stories, which filled in some of the pieces because our grandfather definitely liked to talk when he had the chance to share stories, but he filled in some of the gaps, especially around, being taken under Elmer Lewis's wing and really helping to serve the community in that way for a lot of the community events that she did. And that was actually motivating to my Uncle Ricky, who now serves on like a board for the Franklin Park group, neighborhood group, that's advocating to keep the park belonging to the community and the events that happen in the park. And then also, he now is the chairman and leader for Playhouse in the Park, which is,
Yes.
something that our grandfather was very much involved in. And so I was speaking to somebody some time ago just around the importance of learning these stories in your family, because then you really do realize that a lot of that is really in your DNA, you know. And I don't know if I fully grasped that until becoming an adult, or maybe, yeah, probably even after college. Hmm.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the interesting too is that independence in entrepreneurship takes very different shapes and forms, right? Like
Hmm.
you can also be an entrepreneur, right? Like some people bolt on the organizations and they very much own what it is that they do. They carry themselves with a certain gusto, if you
Yep.
will, a level of independence. So while, at least to my knowledge, formally, our grandfather was not a full-time entrepreneur. He
Right.
definitely was entrepreneurial at different
That's
points
what
in
I'm
his
saying.
life.
Yeah.
But yeah, just the energy that he had, he embodied independence. He embodied being able to chart your own path. And that's something I think if it's shared with you at an early age, it's hard to unsee that, right?
Hmm.
So to your, I guess adding on to, what kind of prompted entrepreneurship, what made you explore this path. Not only was it around us, it was, in us,
Yeah.
at a very early age, the way that that energy was just projected to me and also to you. I mean, you're
Yeah,
as well.
definitely.
So
Definitely. And definitely fusing it with some sort of community out, some form of community impact.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like that was definitely there as well. So I said earlier that you were a graduate of Lincoln Sudbury, which is the MEC, which is a part of, or yes, which is one of the schools a part of the MECO
Correct.
program, where you now serve on the board. Can you talk a little bit about how MECO has been a part of your journey to where you are now, and what are some things that you're doing or either you're doing or the board is doing to continue that program?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm a product first and foremost of Boston Public Schools. I started in Boston Public Schools, went to the MECO program in the fourth grade out to Lincoln and then Lincoln Sudbury. But that program was very integral and pivotal for me because going out to be educated uh, in a town like Lincoln, which is one of the most affluent towns in the state of Massachusetts, therefore in the United States, you see a very different perspective of life. You see a very different perspective of wealth. You actually get a chance to taste it, to feel it, to walk around it. The things that folks are focused on, the way people live, everything is just drastically different. There could not have been a more stark juxtaposition, if you will, between
Mhm.
life in Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan, and life out in Lincoln and Lincoln Sudbury. So understanding, what folks did to live that way. A lot of folks were very much professionals, but they were entrepreneurial as well. That
Yeah.
helped shape that journey. So MECO was pivotal, and it also gives you a different level of grit. Those early bus rides in the morning, the work ethic that you pick up from having to adapt to different environments while also taking on a more rigorous academic schedule is something that I just can't even put a price on what that has meant to me and the dividends that it's continued to pay in my life. And a lot of my peers that have gone through the MECO program or similar schools like Boston Latin or the Latin School, we all share that, right?
Mhm.
It has continued to pay off here into adulthood. So the MECO program was pivotal.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. Um, yeah, everything you said, especially around the exposure. I also think it gives you a high level of relational skills,
Yes, yes,
because you are dealing with different types of people, every single day. And so, like, you go from, I know for me, I lived in Mattapan. And so, going from Mattapan, which is what one end, the end basically of Boston, and, on the bus, I remember just being on the bus coming down, if I took the 28 or if I took the train, whatever. But as I'm making my way to my high school, which was Boston Latin, and just seeing the types of people change on the bus, because that was such, if I took 20, that was such a long route. And then going into school and being in that environment, and then having to go home and to back to my neighborhood and being in another environment. I definitely feel like, in addition to what you said, I learned how to maneuver in any room, and that
mhm,
also built that confidence to be able to do that, that I'm confident in any room that I'm in. So we got your journey for entrepreneurship. Specifically, how did you find your niche in, and I might say this wrong, but is the niche, is the umbrella real estate? Is the umbrella investing? Is it money? Help me understand that.
Yeah, no. So in its simplest form, it is investing. We are in the private equity space, which I know that that and venture capital, especially, is more information is put out into the ether. These terms are thrown around, but the most simplest way is that we're a private company that invests private equity, so money,
Hmm. Yep.
into investments. Our focus is real assets, so we focus on real estate development at scale across asset classes. So we have holdings in laboratories, We have holdings in multifamily assets, so typically 100 units or more.
Yeah.
We have holdings in office buildings. So we're diversified in the things that we're investing in, but we do that with private dollars. So my personal money, along with private investors that have invested alongside us as well.
Yeah. What's the benefit of doing it privately?
Yeah, it's a host of things. One, different access,
Mm.
right? So if you kind of take a step back, all assets are for sale and they're trading at all times, and uh, things are happening and moving before you, and you don't even know it. So when you're in the private markets, you have an opportunity to operate privately. You, depending on your relationships or the market at which you're operating in or what your focus is, you're going to see different investment opportunities. You need to be accredited, which is a definition for a certain net worth or income that basically just shields you from making your own investment decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the public markets, so you go buy a share of a publicly traded real estate company or of a tech company, those markets are regulated in a different way to protect
Mm-hmm.
investors in a different way. Whereas in the private markets, it's kind of, do you have the professional network access and the ability to make investment decisions, whether or not on your own or alongside an investment professional that works with you to
Mm-hmm.
take a certain level of risk that is not necessarily governed in the same way that the private markets or the public markets are. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. I feel like I'm gonna need a class.
You
Do
know,
you all, do you all offer like classes for people that want to get into investing? Maybe
no,
at some point grow into that scale, or
No, that's kind of that's not really what we do. I know there's a lot of
Mhm.
resources for that, and I think
Definitely.
it's great that folks are getting educated on that stuff. But we are full time investors, so at this moment in time, we have no time to do anything but actually do the work and invest. So we're not teaching formally in that way. We have run a pretty cool fellows program where we brought on interns, if you will, but they're fellows for us,
Yeah.
Caste Capital fellows. We've had 6 folks run through that program over the past 3 years. We typically only work with graduate students. So
Yeah.
thus far, all of them have come from Harvard Business School or
Mhm.
MIT Center for Real Estate specifically, and have worked with us in various capacities. So that's been a great way to educate
Yeah.
and give those students who are already professionals in their own right the opportunity to enter into the private equity space. But that's the extent to which
Yeah.
we've done it. And also, of course, just like by way of networks, with friends and family and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We may get into some stuff and answer questions or point folks in a certain direction, but no, not formally. We're not teaching.
Yeah, something that I don't want viewers and listeners to miss is, I think that sometimes and I've done it too, even with my business, we have a habit of overcommitting ourselves, or overextending ourselves and beyond either what we have the capacity to do,
Yeah,
or we do it, just maybe out of the goodness of our heart, but it really is like a duplication of services to your audience because there are many resources out there. And, people are able to look at those resources, but really like your capacity and your focus needs to be what exactly it is that you do. And at some point, maybe that will be maybe, an
yeah.
option, but it's really good that you are very, as they say, laser focused. Uh, into what it is that your business does.
Yeah, and leveraging platforms like this and others, right? Like this is
Mhm.
educational in its own right,
Mhm.
providing exposure to folks that may have heard about certain industries, and
Yeah.
they can tap in to your platform and learn the stories and journeys from folks that are on respective paths. So, yeah, I leave it to the professionals. We are professional investors and
Right.
developers. We are not teachers in that way just yet.
Yeah, and I say this all the time, just because you are good at what you do does not mean that you're going to be good at teaching what you
Yes, correct,
do.
correct.
I
Yeah,
had a professor, a stats professor. He was great in stats, but was not great at being able to teach it.
yeah.
On your website, I read that you all are a socioeconomic catalyst. I love that. I mean, I love the word catalyst, but I love that. Can you talk about what exactly does that mean? What do you all, yeah, what, talk about that, please.
Yeah, I mean, you know, by definition, especially as an investment firm that is primarily focused on real assets and real estate, we're focused on the built environment, right? So, by definition, you are going to impact the communities in which you're operating uh, by default. Okay,
Mhm.
so a few things stuck out to us when we were kind of putting together our investment thesis and thinking around what are we going to focus on? What is our niche, if you will?
Mhm.
We invest across asset classes, as I mentioned. So, you know, we have the laboratory stuff, right? You think about health disparities,
Yeah.
uh, being fortunate enough to be here in Massachusetts, being around healthcare, being around life sciences, being around pharmaceutical companies and the biotech
Yeah.
industry is something that often gets overlooked and taken for granted. But you know, research has to happen, and it happens in laboratories. Um, we are fortunate again to have access to some of the best healthcare systems and hospitals in the world.
Yep.
So being able to take advantage of that and invest in the physical real estate, and now we're starting to at least evaluate investing directly into some of the companies.
Oh.
I have, you know, one antidote on that that I'll share a little bit later. Has been something that has allowed us to be a catalyst in that industry, right?
Mhm.
The other is specifically around housing. So we're focused on investing across the full housing spectrum. So on one end of the spectrum, you have affordable housing, right,
Yep.
which has a lot of government subsidy and public dollars running through that. And then
Mhm.
on the other end, you have like really expensive market rate housing, right?
Mhm.
Housing crisis is a real thing
Yeah.
for all of us, regardless of where you live, especially if you're living in a major metropolitan city. But across the country, there is indeed a housing crisis. And a
Yeah.
big part of that is due to a shortage in the amount of available units, right? So,
Mhm.
very simple economics. If there's scarcity in availability, then it's going to drive up price. If there's oversupply of availability, then it will drive down price.
Mhm.
So, zoning regulations have made it very difficult in major cities to build, therefore driving up the cost because the barrier to entry to build net new housing is difficult, right? So
Right.
it comes through in the rent. So our ability to focus, you know, on one end, we're redeveloping the West End Library and the Beacon Hill West End neighborhood of Boston, which is a very impactful project, a little over 180,000 square feet, 14 stories. We're building a new library at the base of the building and it's going to have 119 units of affordable housing.
Yeah.
That project is very impactful because it's one in a neighborhood of Boston that's very affluent. It has not historically had affordable housing supply, but some
Mhm.
of the most major institutions between Mass Eye or Mass General Hospital are located there, and a lot of people work in those institutions, but they
Mhm.
have to travel from far and wide to get to work every day. So to have an opportunity to live in that neighborhood uh, on an affordable basis is something that is interesting and again allows
Yeah.
us to be a socioeconomic catalyst. On the
Yeah.
other side of the coin are wealth and income gap disparities, which is something that we also thought long and hard about, which kind of plays into entrepreneurship, right? As a
Mhm.
whole, being able to control your own destiny. But there was a color of money Boston Federal Reserve Bank study that was put out a few years ago that highlighted the wealth and income gap here in the city of Boston in particular. But the stat was loosely the average household net worth for a white family in the city of Boston was just about $250,000,
Mhm.
whereas the average net worth for a black family in the city of Boston was just above zero at $8.
Mhm.
So that is a huge spread, and it comes down to ownership of assets, being able to control your destiny, and also access to education and access to upward mobility. So all of those things are interconnected. But when we started to put together again our investment thesis and say, what do we really want to specialize and where do we want to focus on investing from the specific market, but also the asset classes,
Right.
some of those stats, it was just very glaring to us that we could not only be a catalyst for change, but we could also make money along the way by
Yeah.
focusing on those areas.
Yeah. I feel like I want to clap right here because I see it. I see it as you're explaining it, and um yeah, I think Yes, sorry. I'm just like really taking in everything
Yeah,
that
it's a lot. It's a
that
lot.
that-
Before doing this, Rashana, full time,
yeah.
and building Caste Capital, I had the benefit of working, for two of the preeminent investment and development firms in the
Mhm.
country.
Right.
One being the Davis companies and one being Boston Properties.
Hmm.
The way in which they saw the world, the spillover benefits from their investments by way of operating at that level of scale
Hmm.
was something that was ingrained in me, right?
Right.
You will make money, but you
Hmm.
almost have a obligation. You do have an obligation to have some level of public benefit and good be done
Yeah.
by the way of the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
Whether or not you intend to do it, you're going to have them. So you better think about that stuff when you're putting together investment plans. But it's just something that naturally comes with the job. And it's something that we are laser focused on, and we just ingrain that into our strategy from beginning to end.
Yeah. How did you come up with the name?
Yeah, Cast, the book
Hmm.
by Isabel Wilkerson, is something that changed my life,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Hmm.
Here I am, working. I have a great life. I'm continuing to build that life for myself, but uh, doing well and enjoying every moment of it. But I was given that book by a mentor of mine, and I read it very quickly, and it allowed me to see the world differently, right? Not just black and white, but
Hmm.
cast from all different dimensions across races, colors, creeds, genders, and it really prompted me to say, man, what is it that I want to make out of my life? How can I be a change agent while not, deviating too much from what I do professionally? And a big part of that was you got to be an owner, right? You really got to be an owner. You have to find a way to do it at scale. You have to find a way to impact multiples of lives. If you can do that, then not only will you be able to make a good living for yourself, but you're also going to be able to leave a legacy and provide that opportunity for those coming behind you. So that is really how we came up with the name Cast and Cast
Yeah.
Capital, and it's been nothing short of fortuitous, to be frank.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have not read the book. It's been on my reading
Yep,
list
yep,
for,
yep. I got
for,
a
for
copy for
several
you.
years. Yeah, for several years. But I learned about Cass, going when I went to college at Tuskegee University. Is something that we learn a lot about in sociology,
Hmm.
especially going to an HBCU, and like you said,
Hmm.
just really seeing the world um, in all aspects.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's
really
it's it,
understanding
it's
where
like
it is.
implicit. It's not
Mhm.
uh, very explicit oftentimes, right? And I don't want to give too much of the book away, but it is layered in every level of society in every moment of your life.
Yeah.
Uh, when you have the vision, again, reading this book will give you the vision to see
Mhm.
it show up in your life.
Yeah.
But it is very, very powerful. A lot of folks associate the word caste with the Indian way of life, right? Where it's kind of like if you're born at this rung, you can't rise to this rung.
Mhm.
Whereas in America, it's very different. You can kind of be whoever you want to be. You can uh, rise through different levels of caste, if you will. But here we have, again, it's a silent caste system. There are a lot of things that happen in your everyday walk of life that
Yeah.
are indeed remnants of caste.
Yeah. Yeah. So you talked about, like you just said, how here in America, you have opportunities. Mostly people have opportunities to be able to rise out of maybe their particular caste born
Right.
area. Um, So, in your entrepreneur journey with Caste Capital, what are some like peaks and valleys that you have experienced that you may want to impart some advice about either avoiding or running towards for others who are interested, whether it's entrepreneurship or whether it is, getting into private equity investing?
Great question. Um, I'll start with like one, you got to take a real honest look at yourself and understand who you are, right? And you are
Mhm.
going to learn a lot on that journey, more about yourself. Um, I've heard this saying, and I now always say it. Entrepreneurship is really just a test of your own faith, right? Like, do you have the faith? Do you have what it takes to keep going and not really know what's on the other side?
Mm-hmm.
I do think there is a level of measured risk that you got to be willing to take, right? I'm not saying go and bet the farmhouse, or
Right.
you have the craziest idea and you want to bring that to fruition. That's one end of the spectrum, but the other is just being a professional. If you do something and you do it professionally, you can go and be an entrepreneur around what you already do. So being a master of
Mhm.
your craft and
Yeah.
finding something that you enjoy, and you don't mind if you work 40 hours in a full-time role at a company or something like that, you're probably going to work 80 to 120 hours as an entrepreneur. I think that's one of the
Very true.
misconceptions, right? People want to control their
Very
own
true.
schedule. But I think, one, having faith, taking some measured risk, but also you got to be a professional. You got to know what it is that you're getting into. You need to learn the ins and outs about what it is that you're getting into. And to take it a step further, if you are not that person, maybe you're the creative, maybe you're the initial spark, the idea person, you very quickly have to find people who complement your skill set, and you can plug them in to take on some of those other roles, right? Because I'll use a real example
Yeah.
with Caste Capital. Part of our job is investing. I spend a lot of time on things that are non-investment related,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Mhm.
it is meetings with investors. It is administrative tasks. It's reading through legal documents. It's just getting smart in the space, like
Yeah.
things that have nothing to do necessarily. Like they do, they're connected, but you spend a lot of time on other things, right?
Mhm.
But if you enjoy what you're doing and you can somehow see through the fog, because every day it is foggy, right? Some days are clearer than others. That is what's going to allow you to keep going. So that's, I hope that answers your question. Uh,
Yeah.
but those are the three things that I'd probably impart on those that want to take on some level of entrepreneurship and whatever that looks like for themselves.
Yeah. No, I think those were very, 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 very helpful gems. And I think it's something that you reassess what that looks like. I definitely identify with the journey of finding out who you are, especially starting businesses when you're young. When you start a business and you're in your early, even mid 20s, the person that you are, you're still figuring that out too,
Yeah,
and so in a way you begin to see that growth. If you follow a business over time, you can see how that business then grows with that person, or
yeah,
expands with that person, diversifies with that person, maybe even closes with
yeah,
that
yeah.
person. And then, you know, that owner creates something new,
Yep.
it
You
definitely,
reiterate,
yeah,
you
yes,
reiterate over time. And the great thing
yeah,
about being an entrepreneur is you can be nimble, right?
yeah,
And change your course pretty quickly. But I think, and this is important, and I do want to share it because it's been a topic as of late, just with my friends, with family, with
mhm.
business associates. Like, you have to treat whatever it is you're doing, if you are going to, like, people throw around the title entrepreneur or business owner, like it is a cool thing. It's, for lack of better terms, it's sexy, whatever that means to folks.
I
But
remember during the pandemic, everyone
yeah,
was
like,
saying, like, if you don't come out of this as a CEO of your own business,
yeah,
then
sure.
you didn't use your time well. And I'm like,
Sure.
do you
But
know
one, it's not for everyone,
it's
right? Let's just keep it real. It's
not
not for
real?
everyone. But
Mhm.
also, like, just because you go, and these are the initial steps. So I don't want to discount this, because you got to do it, right? If you want to be a business owner. But
Mhm.
because you go and hang a shingle as a LLC, or a formal entity, that is not the end of the journey. Just because
Yeah.
you have a logo or something like that, that's not the end of the journey. If
Yes.
you treat something like a business, then it will pay you like a business, assuming that you're focused on the right thing. But if you
Right.
treat something like a hobby, it's going to pay you like a hobby. You
Hobby.
don't have a business, you have a hobby, you
Yeah.
know, with a title. And
Mhm.
that's
Yeah,
okay
side
too.
hustle.
Um, but there's a big difference. There's a big difference, and nothing happens overnight. But those that I do think are successful in any right are those that really put in the time, are really thoughtful around what it is they're trying to do, and have a level of expertise and differentiation that they are bringing to the market that allows them staying power,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
I think that's very important, because in a world of so much information being thrown around these days, it's hard to decipher like what is what, right, and who is who. So yeah, I just think that's very hopeful, especially for those coming after us, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a real thing.
I absolutely, absolutely, absolutely agree. Well, I want to thank you so much for spending this time with the Vocal Action Podcast, sharing about your journey, your entrepreneurial journey, and also more about Caste Capital. For those who want to connect, business wise, or those who are interested in, pursuing an upcoming fellowship, if those are available, how do people find Caste Capital?
Yeah, check us out. You can go to our website, castcapital.com. That's a good place to start. You can find me on LinkedIn. We use LinkedIn a fair amount. And then, just there are ways to get in contact with us. So I would start with those two mediums, and maybe we'll find an opportunity to connect.
Yeah, sorry, I did have one question, and it might be related to some of the healthcare work that you were talking about.
Yeah.
I saw on your Instagram that you all were promoting like gene therapy,
Yes, yes,
or
yes.
some like conversations around gene therapy.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about your involvement in that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm so glad you mentioned that. So you talk about diversifying.
Mhm.
So one of the companies that we are invested in is a company called Blue Bridge. Cliff Harrison is the founder of Blue Bridge, but that business is a health equity business. It is focused on diversifying clinical trials. It is one that, man, I have learned so much since getting involved with Cliff and with that business, but it is really around promoting health equity and educating. And one of the glaring stats that was brought to me, which kind of allowed me to dive in and underwrite the opportunity in a different way, was that 90% of FDA approved drugs do not have people of color
Mhm.
involved in the clinical trial phases. So when you think about that, you go to the doctor, you get diagnosed with something, they then prescribe you a medicine. You go to the pharmacy, you pick up the medicine, and the medicine that you're taking was not designed with you in mind. So your side effects are different. It may cure you differently. Uh, that was something that really, really, really was important, especially as I thought about our portfolio of companies and the things that we're invested in, particularly here, having access and exposure to the healthcare and pharmaceutical industry. That was one that was a very special opportunity for us to be involved in. So check that business out, Blue Bridge. He does a series of panels where he brings in PhDs, academics, researchers, uh, healthcare executives, doctors across the spectrum for different diseases, if you will, or different verticals within the healthcare
Mhm.
industry. And they educate. They are focused on educating our community to get them up to speed on what's happening in that space, but really with a mission to provide equity while pushing folks towards the hesitancy or past the
That's
hesitancy
what
that
I
has existed in clinical trials for Black and Brown people. So please check that out. It is very important. It is critical for us. But the last panel discussion was focused on gene therapy,
I saw
and we
that.
had a very successful turnout. But that is a business we're very excited about.
Yes, well, maybe you can connect us because I wasn't able to attend the last session for gene
Yes,
therapy, and I know there's been a lot of conversation. Um, with some of the or at least one of the major brands or companies that's focused in gene therapy, and I don't want that to cloud the very real need for clinical trials, as well for clinical trials to include Black and Brown people, but
yes,
also for us to learn more about our genetics, and learning more about our genetics, we can actually find out earlier about
yes,
different diseases that we may be at a higher risk for,
yes.
and then we can develop health plans that help to prevent those things either from onsetting, or they we will know how to better provide our health plan for ourselves so that we can deal with those different
Absolutely.
things.
And
So
look,
yeah, so
there's
please make that connection if you can.
yeah, no, look, there is power and knowledge. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you got to be intellectually curious. You got to want to seek out information. And Blue Bridge is doing a phenomenal job at providing a platform to be educated in that space.
So last two questions, and I ask this to everyone. What would you say? And for those, I mean, people watch that, you guys know that one of my favorite pastimes, which I am decreasing these days, is reality TV. I just feel like it's a way to escape my reality and watch something that doesn't require a lot of brain power. But one of the things I like is that every season they ask the cast to basically define themselves with like a short phrase or mantra or motto. So Patrick, what would be yours?
Man, that's a tough one. You know, I don't know, Rashawn.
Yeah,
I really don't have an answer for that. Maybe I can follow up with
yeah,
that one.
yeah.
I don't have anything on the spot right now.
Yeah, you can follow up because we're going to do a part two where we're going to tour your office space.
Okay, great,
Congratulations on that. I saw
great.
that you all were able to acquire some office space in the Prudential. Is that right?
Yep, yep. We're
Yep.
here in the Prudential Center. Come check
Yeah,
us
yeah,
out.
which is big.
Yep,
That's
yeah,
really big.
it's
For those of you all
exciting.
who are not from Boston, you all may not understand exactly what that means. I'm trying to think of some sort of like national equivalent that everyone would understand. Um, Maybe it's like acquiring space in the World Trade Center, or,
Yeah, I mean
like,
it's the
is that,
second tallest
like,
skyscraper here in the city of Boston, and we're fortunate to be headquartered here. I'm sitting in the space right now. Uh,
yeah,
it's very exciting for us.
yeah, yeah. So for those of y'all that don't know, but yes, so we'll have a part two. So you'll have to let us know what that is then when
For
we
sure.
tour the office. And the last question is, what do you want the legacy of Caste Capital to be?
You know, I really just want to break down the barrier to entry to this space, right? Like I
Hmm.
had the opportunity to be exposed uh, to investing, to real estate development, to private equity, and I say it all the time. It has changed my life, and I understand that that is a blessing. That is something that is unique to myself, and I hope by doing this work and by launching a platform like Caste Capital, it inspires others that look like me to do the same in their own right,
Yeah,
and inspires others to be curious and find their path in the business. It is a phenomenal business and career path to take on if it's of interest to you. Um, and I really think we have an opportunity to show folks what is absolutely possible for you if you are focused, if you want something enough, and are willing to put in the work and the energy to obtain it. So we're still early on our journey, but I hope that what we're doing is inspiring to someone out there.
yes, yes. I know I was inspired just listening.
Thank
So
you.
I hope that others are inspired to learn more, or become entrepreneurs, or even support entrepreneurs, because like you said, everyone is not, um, and that's okay. Everyone is not going to be an entrepreneur, but
Yeah,
entrepreneurs, our businesses are nothing without the people who help the business grow, whether that's our clients, whether those are our employees,
absolutely.
contractors, interns,
Yep.
fellows, whatever. So I hope that people are also inspired by
Yeah, and
that.
look, and you know, and I'll leave you on this. Everyone may not find it in themselves to be an entrepreneur, but everyone can indeed be an investor. And whatever that means to you, invest in yourself, invest in your friends, invest in opportunities that make sense. It does not have to be complicated, but it is the only way to change your life. They say, compound persistence and compound interest are wonders of the world. So
Mhm.
take advantage of that.
Yeah, yeah. I started small. I'm in a real estate investment group.
I love it.
And during the pandemic, we just started with, you could buy as many shares as you want. They were $500 a share. And, we're buying real estate
I love it. I
and
love
in the
that.
DMV. And I'm not a person that's going to just go out there on my own, nor do I have the personal capital to necessarily do that. Or maybe it's some fear there. But being with an investment group of people who know more about real estate, doing it with your friends, that's something that for me felt very doable,
Yes.
and so you can start there, learn more about investing, and then, you can try,
There's power in the collective.
yeah,
Educate.
right, make
Make
a
sure
venture.
you're doing your due diligence, but absolutely, there's power in the collective. So
Yeah,
be an investor.
yeah.
We'll leave it at that.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening to another episode of the Vocal Action Podcast. Thank you, Patrick, for being a guest on today's episode. And till the next time, peace. I actually need to do peace this way. See the